Okay.
Hey,
So,
good.
hello everybody, and welcome to the virtual chapter for May of 2019. It is May 14th, and we are delighted to be here tonight. We have as a special guest Melissa Tiers, and we will be introducing her to you just in a few minutes here. As we get underway, we do want to let you know if you are a member of IACT or IMDHA, you can get CEUs for attending this hour and a half, and I like to reclaim the time that I've spent. So if you want to get your rewards, all you need to do is to go out to the IACT website, log in with your member ID, and it's what I spent 2 hours listening to, or an hour and a half rather, listening to Karen and Melissa and Michael, and I want you to compensate me for it, and they will do that. So
You
remember
can also get CEUs from ICBCH and IHF, and probably any other cooperating and friendly organizations.
I love the phrase cooperative friendly organizations. We'll give you CEUs for this. And there will be a replay. The replay will be posted at my best efforts about noon tomorrow. I'm getting ready to get out of town, so it may get delayed a little bit tomorrow. My schedule is kind of wacky, but for the end of the day, it will be posted on the IMDHA website, in the Mind Matters forum. It will be posted in the virtual chapter Facebook room, and it will be posted in the virtual chapter YouTube channel. So you can find it there. And now, here are the official announcements and dates. It is, Karen, pinch yourself. Just pinch yourself to make sure.
Okay.
Is it real? Is it true?
It's real. It's real.
It is how many days? 2 days from now.
That's right.
Sitting in the sun with that lovely ocean view behind me, and you and I may be enjoying an adult beverage out there on the beach or something like that.
Or something, yeah.
Magnificent. The IMDHA Expo is this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. There's a couple of pre and post things. You've heard all about that when we did the presenter series. So I hope you're going to be there. We've got a table set up, so be sure and stop by and say hi and get acquainted if we've not had a chance to meet you in person before. Some of you we only know in 2 dimensions, so it would be really nice to see you in the 3rd or 4th dimension out at the conference. And June 10th, 17th, and the 24th, online, the virtual chapter, virtual hypnotist class will be offered yet once again. This class keeps filling up, and I get to do it over and over again. And thanks to the support of people like Melissa and Jason Lynette and folks who've been putting the word out. I really appreciate it. It's just a lovely thing to do. If you want to learn how to do hypnosis online, that's the way to do it. You can contact me, flhypno@outlook.com, or on the virtual chapter. It's posted in the virtual chapter and stuff. There's all kind of ways to get in touch with me. 2 more things. What do we got?
We've got Hypno Thoughts coming up in August, and Mid-America Conference coming up in October. So put those on your calendars as well.
Put those on your calendars as well. And here's our schedule coming up. This is May. We have the wonderful Melissa Tiers for you tonight. June 11th, we're going to be meeting with Art Geiser, who is an NLP trainer all the way back from the pioneer days, who did a lot of his training with Leslie Cameron, and he has a unique perspective. So I'm really looking forward to having him on the program. On July 9th.
We'll have Scott Schmerin. He's from Chicago, and I like to call him the Howard Stern hypnotist. He's done some past life regressions on the Howard Stern show. I think he's pretty ballsy for doing that, but Howard loves it. And so that's what he does. That's not what he'll necessarily be talking to us about. He calls himself a neuroepinephrine, something, a billion-letter word, and he works with a lot of NLP techniques and other things. He'll be talking to us about a lot of cool stuff coming up.
Right. Now in August, by the way, we're just waiting for the ink to dry on this one, so I can't tell you yet, but we're going to have a really special guest in August. And in September, we have Connie Ray Andreas, who of NLP fame, who created the core transformation process. More recently, she's been working on the wholeness work, and she's going to talk to us about that. So that's going to be a really special lineup. And that's where we are for now. So before I introduce the speaker, anything left, Karen?
No, I don't think that we want to take any more time away from Melissa. I think we want to get right to her.
Well,
that was your bit?
That was
it. That was our bit, yeah.
Yeah, so
I wouldn't have necessarily called it a bit. I called it announcements, but
okay.
So Melissa Tiers is the founder of the Center for Integrative Hypnosis, and she has a private hypnosis practice in New York City. She teaches classes in integrative hypnosis and neurolinguistic psychology and mental health counseling. She is an instructor for the NGH and the International Association of Counselors and Therapists, and an adjunct faculty member of the New York Open Center and Tri-State College of Acupuncture. She's a 3-time recipient of the International Medical and Dental Association's prestigious Pen and Quill Award for 3 books, mind you: Integrative Hypnosis, a comprehensive course in change; Keeping the Brain in Mind, Practical Neuroscience for Coaches, Therapists and Hypnotists, and Hypnosis Practitioners. I've said it wrong, but Keeping the Brain in Mind, that's the part you need to remember. And Integrative Hypnosis for Kids and Teens, Playing for Change, that she recently completed with Kelly Woods, who I believe has also been on this program at some point and recently featured in Marie Claire. I saw the article, by the way. I loved it. A woman writing an article about how she's abandoned her therapist and come to see Melissa. So as so many people should do. And
yes, good choice.
Melissa is all over the map and all over the planet. She is the speaker and author of the year for 2014 at the Zurich Hypnosis Congress. She's the 2018 keynote speaker at the Medical Therapy Association and the UK Hypnosis Conferences. Books and books and wonderful things, and such an exciting lady with such exciting stuff and a big, big fan club. So we're really excited to have you with us.
Yes.
Thanks.
Are you back in New York now, or are you still in Mexico?
I'm back in New York.
You're back in New York.
I
You
am.
wintered though in Mexico,
As
right?
we speak.
But you wintered.
I was in Mexico for a few months. I've decided to skip winter for the rest of my life, or at least for the next few years. And this year was the first year while my daughter left the nest and went to her freshman year at college. I decided I was leaving the nest too. And so, yeah, you know, and Michael, I do want to put this shout out for your virtual hypnotist class, because one of the things about being in Mexico for over 2 months was I was really grateful to have such portable skills. You know, when I typically go on vacation, I don't do any sessions or things like that. But, you know, at over 2 months, it gets a little difficult to, you know, to not do any sessions. So I was really grateful to have taken that training with you.
Nice.
Because it just, honestly, I was really late to come to this like virtual session party. I'm just a real hands-on kind of, I just like people being in the room with me. But I will say there is something about the headphones, you know, going straight into the client's ears, and this total immersive experience that is, you know, within 5 minutes, you totally forget that you're not right there with them. And so anyway, so yeah, Mexico was awesome. I had a really good little supervision workshop, a kind of, you know, where I just limit it to a handful of people, and we did some weird, you know, trancing. I've been developing some different psychedelic trance states. And so, you know, we were doing that kind of on this balcony overlooking the ocean. It was fucking gorgeous. So yeah, Mexico was fun. I don't know if I'm going back to Mexico next year. I will be going back. I'm thinking I might just, you know, do a road trip and do, you know, Florida, South Beach, the Keys, just so that it's easier for my family to come and visit. But anyway, so what I thought would be fun, because this is a chapter meeting, you know, I just thought almost a conversational approach would be more fun. You know, as you've heard, I've been doing a lot of lectures and workshops and keynote speeches, and the last thing anyone needs is for me to just talk at you. So I thought, you know, we would kind of open it up for questions. The theme, I guess, of the evening is practical neuroscience, which at this point is kind of one of the things I'm known for. So I know that there's quite a few of you, you've just listened to my keynote. I know, Mark, you were there, and some others. So, you heard me go on and on about, the need for understanding how the brain changes and how the brain takes in information and learns new information, and that dopamine should always be flowing in your self and your clients, because that's how the brain pays attention and learns. And so what creates dopamine, right? So it's novelty, and it's curiosity, and it's laughter, and it's all the things that you want to be generating in your sessions. It should be fun. So if you kind of start there with just the basic underlying, what is the state I need to be in? What is the state I want to cultivate in my clients? How are our brains mirroring each other? And, how are we creating kind of multi-level conversations? And one of the things that I'm always pointing out to my students is, we're conveying millions of bits of information between us when we're sitting with a client. And, 99.9% of that is out of our conscious awareness. And so how can we stack the deck? How can we get so congruent that every single unconscious thing leaking out of us through our tonality, our breath rate, our facial expressions, our body language, all of the things that we are constantly projecting, how can we make that congruent? And, and so these are the things that I sit down with every client. There's an awareness of these things, because I know that this is what we're doing all the time. And so there's a few cheats that I have. And to first think about, brain change as something that's happening anyway. That's the thing, right? Neuroplasticity is going on all the time, almost every moment, whether you realize it or not. And it's how do we be more strategic? And I think most of us in all of the work that we do as hypnotists, I always say we're already doing creating brain change. We're already getting our clients to create different changes in the brain whenever we have them, do any of the processes that we encourage them to do. So I've kind of simplified it down, and I'll go through this quickly so that we can spend more time just having a conversation. For me, I think of neuroplasticity in a few different ways. And I like to share this with my clients so that they understand what they're doing. Remember, curiosity, that goes a long way in our sessions. If we can get them curious about how they can change their brain, or how the thing they've been doing, has been conditioning certain neural networks in very specific ways, and how we can strategically interrupt those patterns and begin to cultivate a neural flexibility, different connections. And sometimes I draw big metaphors with my hands so that they can, have a visual for it. Sometimes I'll say, look, what we've got now, you've got, here's your public speaking, neural network, and here's the neural network for confidence. And, these two just haven't met yet, So we're going to loop this thing. And I want you to think about it like this. The first time I loop this thing, these two, this just nudges each other. They become aware of each other. It's a synaptic sensitivity, right? And then the next time we loop it, and then we loop it and we loop it, they shake hands, and then they shake hands, and they keep holding on. And then we have more neurons and more neurons. And so we're trying to develop this bigger, badder neural network that contains confidence and contains your public speaking. And so if I do this with my clients in really simple ways, they get it. Yeah. It makes a lot of the repetition that I force my clients to go through, it makes sense to them, right? So I often will give a whole host of techniques, right? So Many of you are already aware of like the anti-anxiety toolkit that I give to all my clients. And it's just a little book that has a bunch of pattern interrupts, everything from bilateral stimulation and shifting into peripheral vision and faster EFT and the backward spin and heart breathing and, you know, anything that's going to act as what I call a roadblock. And here's another big thing that I often give to my clients. I say, look, this is your habit road. You know, you've been going down it for many years. It's nice and wide. no grass grows there, but here's what we're going to do today. We're going to start to go down the road and we're going to put a roadblock up. And that roadblock is designed, right, to detour your brain, to connect to different, you know, neural networks. And the more times we can do this, the more varied emotional states and body states we can include here, the more flexibility you'll have. And so that's like the first level of work with my clients. I give them a set of techniques. It's designed for self-directed neuroplasticity. I say, this is how you change your brain. Now, all those techniques are also fantastic because they tend to get people out of the unwanted emotional state. And whether that's anxiety or whether that's a compulsive tendency or whether it's a craving, whatever that is, you know, that road they're on, right? So it not only acts to build neural flexibility, but it acts to, in that moment, get them out of an unwanted state. That also arms them, right? And when you arm your clients with ways of getting out of unwanted states, then they have a tendency to have less incidences of those states because they know they can stop it. And there's, you know, so much of what we are dealing with when we're dealing with people's issues is there's a few layers to their issues. And a lot of it is anxiety about the anxiety, fear about the fear, panic of the panic. And so you are really taking care of a whole layer, that meta layer, when you arm people. So that's like one way of thinking about a strategic way of offering self-directed neuroplasticity.
You know, can I just
please.
A word in here, because something that I think is I want to make clear for people. There's a whole backstory here, and I know, of course, that you started out with integrative hypnosis and neuroscience started to present itself, you know, and became a bigger and bigger part of what you do. And something that you were saying earlier that that we're already doing this stuff, I think, is absolutely right. You know, the interesting thing is, as you were talking about the neural networks, right? And this one talks and then they hang on, right? Here's an integration of polarities piece that some people know by that name and have maybe never thought about it in these terms until now.
That's right.
And the pattern interrupt, the same thing, that look at what this is doing on a level of neuroscience. And we already know how to do these things.
Yes. So this is it. Sometimes it's just a shift in perspective. Sometimes it's just understanding that what you've been doing all along is helping someone to change their brain. Now that you are aware of that, you can be even more strategic. You can take this out of, this is this crazy technique, and, you know, bring it down to something tangible, something that allows conscious buy-in. And that's another thing I always harp on, is the tendency in many hypnotic circles to feel like they need to do away, you know, push aside the conscious mind, you know. And for me, it's exactly the opposite. I need to get the conscious mind involved, you know, even more in this change work. So it's about conscious buy-in, and sometimes giving the little bullet metaphors of neuroscience gives people an understanding. It takes the problem out of a psychiatric term, you know, sometimes, and puts it into just a habit. You know, I work with a lot of other people's patients. I always joke it's OPP. I'm down with OPP, other people's patients, right? So by the time they come to me, they've been diagnosed with all this crap, you know, because that's the way the system's set up. You know, you need the diagnosis in order to get the meds. You need that in order to get reimbursed by insurance. You know, it's just this, you know, loop. that people get stuck in. But as soon as they come to me, even though I'm working with a referral from their psychiatrist, they sit down and, I always say, what do you want to change today? What are we doing? What are we changing today? And that in itself is like a kind of pattern interrupt. And, they'll say, well, I have, generalized anxiety, or I have, depression, or they'll use some label. And I'll say, whoa, I'm not a therapist. And in this office, I can't even use that diagnostic terminology. In my office, what you've got is a habit. It might be a tenacious habit, but it's a habit in the brain. And let me teach you how to change habits in the brain. And so right away, we take it out of this thing and turn it into something changeable. And it's true. It's far more true than the diagnosis that they had been given, for the most part, on many levels.
And Melissa, that feeds right into a question that Joe Moon posed, which is she wants to get your take on neuroscience and addiction, specifically opioids. And that's the way you deal with addictions too, right?
It is. It's, once again, so I work on a few levels. What I've just described is what I think of as the top layer, right? And that is, although I say it's the top layer and topical, only because it feels like an easy fix, right? Like, oh, I can thwart, what my brain is doing and get rid of the craving, and I can then choose a different path. But really, we are creating definite brain change. The next layer is that, I work with my client to neutralize different triggers. Sometimes that involves using the other form of neuroplasticity, which is, therapeutic memory reconsolidation, which is the type of neuroplasticity that creates a different quality of brain change. You can think of this one that I was describing as counteractive, right? They call it counteractive neuroplasticity because you're creating counter roadways, right? Sure. Therapeutic memory reconsolidation, you are dealing with the actual road, right? And you are rewriting the part of that road that has most of the juice, and that's the emotional track, right? And and we can talk about memory reconsolidation, because, as I'm always saying, whenever people allow me to talk, it is the game changer that's coming, or I hope it's coming. Yeah. It's the thing. It's the revolution is on its way. And, pretty soon, once this becomes more common knowledge, it used to be, they would say an average of 50 years for what's happening in the laboratory to trickle down into, popular belief, cultural belief, and in practical terms, right? But now with the internet and with this instant connection that we can have to the research being published, and so hopefully it's happening sooner. It's only really been 10 years that we are getting more strategic with therapeutic memory reconsolidation. But for me, that's the other form of neuroplasticity. But there's another way I like to think about it. And Joe, when it comes to addictions, these are two very vital, necessary levels. And the third level that I'll just finish my 3-tiered approach, is meaning making. And I think it's something that quite often gets overlooked in certain NLP circles and things like that. And that is the new narrative, the understanding, the deeper clarity that people want to know why. Why? What was the purpose of this? What was the positive intention underneath this? How can I rewrite my story? And it really is a search for meaning, honestly, especially when you're dealing with people that have been challenged with addiction. There's a lot of research indicating the crossover between, early childhood adversity, and people that are more likely to get caught in the addiction cycle. And so I think that's a big, vital piece. The other kind of way I want you to think about neuroplasticity is when we practice rehearsal, right? Mental rehearsal. Now, a lot of the research on, on neuroplastic changes in the brain when it concerns, musicians and athletes and stroke victims, and is through this kind of repetition, right? Neurons that fire together wire together. We get that. And we also get that neurons that fire apart wire apart, that there is a truism to use it or lose it, and when it comes to which neural networks we are paying attention to, we are strengthening through our own repetition, then those are the muscles that we are, kind of building up. And the other ones really do kind of wither, and and they go back to a kind of normal state of affairs. So if you are a musician and you are practicing, we can look in the brain and we can say, oh, they use this hand to get the notes. We can see that because it's denser and it's thicker. It's got, a more robust neural network associated with it. But if they stop practicing for a few months, then their brain looks just like someone who isn't a musician. And I think this is key for our clients, right? Because not only are you cultivating these new neural networks, but you are, by not giving such, attention to the old problem, it's going to get less and less of an issue, neurologically speaking, There's a few other things that I like to play with. And sometimes just the mental rehearsal that we have, let's say clients doing self-hypnosis, right? Making a movie, see yourself having made the change. See yourself up there, if it's public speaking, doing this great job, float in and embody it. Try it on. We know that the embodied experience, right, beats out just the dissociated, observing and mentally rehearsing. Athletes that embody the mental image and play it, they get a lot more benefit, right? So all of my self-hypnosis involves clients doing this mental rehearsal in one form or another. And a lot of times every day I have people do a quick little, I play with a bunch of different inductions that I give to my clients that take less than a minute, right? I work with New Yorkers and everything has to take less than a minute or they won't use it. So I've created a bunch of very quick self-hypnotic techniques where my clients then just sit in the change. You have to understand something about how the brain functions. It's an assumption machine. It's a prediction machine, in that it is always making predictions. It is always responding to, creating, living out the programs it's been running. In other words, your brain is always kind of living in the past, in that is how the brain knows to be. And one of the things that you want to do is you want to teach the brain to be different, right? And to do that is to first use your mind in a way that allows you to almost fool the brain into thinking it is already different. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And we do this, once again, like Michael said, we do this all the time with the various processes that we use in hypnosis, right? We have people embody the change. So there's, what is his name? Rick Hansen. Rick Hansen? That's not the Muppets guy. It is Rick Hansen. Sorry. Who was the Muppets guy? Jim Hansen.
Jim Hansen, yeah.
Right. So Rick Hansen, his latest book, Hardwiring Happiness, he says that you can practice an emotional state until it becomes a neural trait. And I think that that's really something to own, because it's so easy to incorporate this as homework with your clients. You know that they can practice being in these different emotional states, because what, you know, your brain is amazing, and every single thought, you know, every single thought is doing something, right? It's activating regions in the brain all the time, every thought, every visualization, everything like that. And if you're only thinking the thoughts you've been thinking, then you're just strengthening the old neural networks. But if you start to think, to feel and think and be different in your mind, then you are being different in your brain. And that's the cool thing. Every thought has a bunch of biochemical counterparts, right? Every thought changes your hormone state, your blood levels, you know, like all these thousands of interactions are happening every moment with every thought. It's not just this standalone cognitive prefrontal cortex, you know, just this disembodied process. The way we think about, you know, oh, you're just thinking, you need to feel. It's, you know, we draw these arbitrary lines, but there really isn't any. You know, it's all one. And you think, you change your mind, you change your brain, you change your body, you change your hormonal state, you change the electrochemicals going through your brain, your body, everything. You change your gene expression. You know, I mean, you're changing the environment in which your genes are reacting. Right. And that is what neuropeptides, what hormones, all of this stuff. So, I mean, sorry, you can tell that I've heard countless times, well, it's just a thought.
Well, it is just a thought, but
then
you know,
I get really...
it's a rather powerful thing, isn't it? But,
yes.
You know, Melissa, if you don't mind, I'd love to interject a question here. I hope that this is a good time for it, because
it's always a good time for a good question.
Well, I know that there's two answers for this, and they're both in entirely different domains, and you're actually doing the advanced course right now. And you don't even know it yet. But if I didn't warn you that I was going to ask this, I certainly have been asked to ask you this. So you are famous for one of the most profound quotations in hypnosis history. Karen loves.
Oh yes, profound. That's exactly what I would think of it.
Well, I think that's the thing that's so beautiful about it, is that it is profound, both with regard to the things that we do, and with regard to in our practices, and with regard to the things that people do within themselves that you're talking about now. So for anybody who's not in the loop here, the quotation, of course, as Melissa here says, that what is it? Everything is shit. No, wait, that's not it. Because she's been misquoted so often.
I've been misquoted on this simple, not even a full sentence, this simple little bumper sticker. I've been misquoted in so many ways that it's quite unbelievable. But yes, so I say this shit is all made up.
Yes.
Right. So let me just talk a little bit about it.
Please talk about it.
There's many answers to this. The reason why I started saying it, and you know, I don't know when I started saying it. I guess I started when I was watching my students get all bent out of shape over doing a process right or doing it wrong. Or they would always say, you know, can we use this in a way? Can I do, you know, we were doing this and this and this. So my first thing is, well, did it work? Yeah. Okay, you did it right then. It wasn't the way I gave you the exercise, but the outcome, you got it. Yay, you did it. So part of me was trying to get my students to feel more comfortable with all of this stuff by saying, look, this shit is all made up, right? Every induction, every process, every technique is made up by somebody or by a few people. And once you get that and really get it, then you start to relax around your change work. You can pay attention to the person in front of you. So that's one layer, right?
Right.
The other layer is, you know, this shit is all made up. I mean, really? I mean, like, let's look at the brain. Let's look at the act of seeing even, and recognize that, you know, what you think you are doing when you're looking, like I'm looking around my room, I see the different colors on the wall, I see all of this stuff, I see the paintings, you know, we used to think seeing was this passive kind of experience, right? Like we're looking out of a camera lens and we're just kind of viewing the world, right? The world out there. And what you really start to learn when you dive a little deeper into the neuroscience of perception is that we are making this shit up in a big way, right? The only thing that's registering, the only thing you're taking in from out there is light. You know, it's energy, and it's hitting certain areas in your eyes that are throwing back to different regions in the brain, and many different regions in the brain, as well as some you wouldn't even have thought were devoted to vision, because we have perception and belief that can get in the way with what we see. But there's all these things, and it's upside down, and it's got to be flipped upright, and then it's got to be shown to us. And that is seeing, right? So it's all created. But even that is a big part of our brain is making it up because it can't know, right? So I always joke that if you're not walking around with two big gaping holes in your peripheral vision, right, where there's no rods, cones, there's no photoreceptors in that part of the eye, and that's why we have it called the blind spot. But we don't know that blind spot because our brain fills it in. Our brain looks at what's there and makes a guess, its best guess as to what would be in that spot, and fills it in. So that's another layer of this shit is all made up, because that's just vision. I could talk about hearing in the same way, without the apparatus and without the brain regions online in order to, analyze the data. And then, analyze sounds very scientific, but still there's a lot of shit made up there too. Like if there's a discrepancy between visual and auditory, the brain just makes this other guess. Combines the two. I mean, it's quite fascinating, but it doesn't feel that way. The same way that every memory is an active synthetic process of calling things up from different regions, and then making up some shit to go along with it. Our stories are made up. Our problems on many levels are made up problems. We have a certain stimulus, and then we make all sorts of, narratives around it. And that too is made up. I mean, I could go down that rabbit hole quite deep.
Well,
but
I've actually got a question from the audience that I think is right in line at that particular point, because she's asking, Melissa, what are your thoughts on sensitizing events? In your opinion, how does memory reconsolidation differ from regression therapy with regard to the brain?
Well, so that's a big question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to, as you can see, get down to the essentials, right? Yeah. So for me, one of the other ways that I talk about understanding a little bit more about the brain and neural networks is that we grow, right? And as we grow from little babies, we start with just primary sensory experience, right? And one of the things, I think I just was babbling on about this in the keynote, or maybe it was a different keynote, or maybe it was another class. I don't even know anymore. I'm really sick of myself. So my apologies if you heard this before, Mark. You just happen to be right in front of me.
We'll have a richer experience of it the second time.
Yes. So, when you think that we are building foundational sensory primes, right? And I use the hot and cold, right? That warmth and nurturing is encoded very early on, right? And so from that neural net, everything else grows. So we don't kind of create a new neural network for every other thing that happens. We're growing it, if you can think of it like that. And so we have this neural network that says, very early on, your first day of life, if you've been, pressed next to mom or dad, you understand this is good, this is soothing, warmth and nurturing and food and all of it, right? Mm-hmm. And that being put down and by yourself, or being, you know, cold and wet is bad, right? So we have these two. From that, experience grows, so that the metaphoric starts to get built on top of that, so that we can say someone is cold-hearted, or giving me the cold shoulder, or, you know, that person's so cold, or I'm starting to warm up to this individual, or they've got such a warm heart. And the fact that we will be manipulated if we are holding a cup of warm liquid, we will rate the individual as being warmer, so that the physical feeling of warmth gets intertwined with the concept, the conceptual frame, right, that we're building. And that's just one little example. Well, everything is like that. So once you begin to understand that an initial sensitizing event, which, you know, it's typically not an initial sensitizing event unless we are talking about, you know, a kind of trauma. Usually it's a bunch of little things that build on each other, right? So you have initial sensitizing event, subsequent sensitizing events in that language, and you have that happen. What that then does is it builds certain ideas, certain narratives. We make meaning out of that. And then we have beliefs and limitations surrounding that, so that it's all a part of the same network. So whether it's the initial sensitizing event, or whether it's the meaning we make of it, whether it's our own idea about our sense of worthiness in the world, or our safety in the world, or is the world a safe place? Can I trust individuals? All of these are in the same network. So when we do something like re-imprinting, right? Something like you know, early change the initial sensitizing event, we are affecting the whole network, right? You can't just change one piece. It's a gestalt. It's all part of the same network. Now, whether you change that initial sensitizing event, or whether you change how it is manifesting today, right? In, oh, every time I, you know, hear this tone of voice, I have this panic. Well, if we neutralize that with any one of our techniques, then that's the beautiful thing. None of it fucking matters. However you want to neutralize it is all good. You want a regression to cause? Fantastic. It'll get the job done, provided you know to activate the neural network, introduce the change, and let that generalize. Fantastic. You want to do timeline? That'll do it too. You want to do EFT? Fine. All of these. You want to do core transformations? You want to go for the beliefs? You want to get core beliefs? You want to get core emotions? They're all a part of the same network. And as I was joking in the keynote, you know, it's we all have a piece of the elephant, and we're arguing over the shape of an elephant is like. But the truth is, all of these techniques will work, provided you're a bit more strategic in knowing when to use them. And this is where you have to understand the structure of change. And whether it's therapeutic memory reconsolidation or anything else, you have to activate the neural network in order for it to become malleable. Once it's malleable, anything that introduces change is going to affect the network. But then we also have expectation, belief. So if somebody comes into me and they say, well, I have this issue because, you know, when I was young, this thing happened to me. Of course, the easiest maneuver to make, the one that's in line with their expectation and belief, is to put them into trance and say, we're going back to the very first time. That has everything to do with this. That's what they're expecting. If somebody comes in and says, I have this because a psychic told me that it was from a past life, that I did this bad thing and I never, you know, said I was sorry or whatever. We're going to go into trance. We're going to go into the past life, and they're going to do what they expect is what they need to do in order to get the change. Because this shit is all made up.
Yeah, lovely.
So I think as long as you understand the crucial elements involved in brain change, and you understand that all of these things are connected, then it's a matter of what technique is going to fit the client in front of you, you know? And one of my favorite Erickson quotes that I keep nowadays, I just keep sharing is, because I do train a lot of therapists, you know, that is primarily what shows up here in New York and they all come from different camps, just like hypnotists seem to come from different camps, except me. I'm not a joiner. Anyway, is that Milton Erickson said, therapists can't afford the luxury of a theory.
Nice.
And I just love that. It's one of my favorite Erickson quotes because it says so much, right? Your expectation, your belief as a practitioner is going to filter the information you have access to. Not only will it filter the information, but the millions of bits of information you are giving directly to your clients that you are not even aware of is going to also influence the outcome. You know, very early on, back in the days of Yahoo groups, right? Of like email list groups. I don't even know how they work, but I guess like a Yahoo group. I encountered someone who, you know, the question was, someone was very sick in a hospital and they're really depressed. Any ideas? And somebody with such conviction said, well, clearly it's an entity attachment. And I thought, wait, what? Because I was new to this. I was 2 years in, and I was literally like, wow, wait, I need clarification here because I got Linda Blair in my head, and I know that's not what you mean. That can't be what you mean.
Surely.
Well, I got involved in this thing, and my mind was blown. I had no fucking idea that this was a thing, but it's a big thing. People write books about it and everything. Now, I'm not here to argue whether or not that's real. How could I know? I mean, I do believe this shit is all made up, especially that nasty shit, but what? I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I'm a true agnostic. I really don't know. But in this case, I hope I am not wrong, because the idea that that is a possibility in the world is frightening. But anyway, the one thing I really learned from this, because the guy said over 95% of every client that comes into his office has an entity attachment or more. And I was like, okay, instead of arguing about this thing, which how could we, because where's the data? Well, we can't argue about it. It's just your experience shows you this. My experience here in New York City, where if these things were going to happen, I would imagine in my hood, there'd be a shitload. But anyway, how about we talk about our beliefs and our expectations? Because I don't believe this and I don't expect it, so I've never seen it. Now, he probably thinks I'm missing it, that I've been doing the wrong work for all of my clients, or at least 95% of them. But truly, it started to get me thinking, how are our expectations and our beliefs filtering what it is we are seeing, what it is we are projecting, right? So when you start to understand that a big piece here is not just about your client's expectations and beliefs, but you need to check your own.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, in the same way, I had another on the same group, I think, person say that all the women that he sees in his office are man haters. And all trying to, turn women into lesbians. I was like, dude, I'm in New York City. I don't have any man. I've never had a woman come into my office who's a man-hating lesbian convert. Like, what's happening here? He was literally, and he was so congruent. Yeah. This was his experience. And I'm like, wow, we need to have a deeper conversation, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I got a little off.
Yeah,
I don't even know why, but
this is great. This is a great thing to talk about anyway. And Scott Babb in the comments. He says when every tool in your toolbox is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And we
well, that's exactly it. And also understand how the brain lights up and learns.
Yeah.
Dopamine is for novelty, you know? I mean, you want to keep pulling out stuff that is new to your client's brain, because then the brain pays attention. It says, ooh, something new is happening here.
And here's the paradox to me, because as everything is made up, even dentistry is made up. You know, there's a certain way to do dentistry, and and we don't think about that. But you know, you go in and you walk up to the window, and there's a way that it's expected to be.
Yes.
And we don't see it at all because we are in the forest. But when you said Erickson's quotation about therapists can't afford a theory, what I couldn't help but just laughing inside, because I'm thinking, and you know what? There are people that are theorizing about just that statement right now.
Of course.
It is what we do. I like to tell people that I think real mastery involves the avoidance of conclusions. And I think you've heard me talk about this before, that as soon as you lock it in and go, this is the way that it is, you're done.
That's it.
And then what are you manifesting? What are you manifesting or leading someone down a pipe for?
Right. So there's, but also back to that, you know, conviction is what you get when you stop thinking, right? And I really take that quote to heart, because I am always thinking, and there are certain things that I start to feel myself close around, right? Like feel like I know. And that's when I have to really check myself, you know, and I do that quite often, especially now in this crazy ass country we're living in.
I was going to say, I've read your Facebook posts.
Yeah. So sometimes I just get so caught up in it, and it's really hard to see the way out. And one of the things that I was harping on and on about curiosity being my lifesaver here is, you know, not only does it keep dopamine flowing, but curiosity, you know, it saves me. It saves me from my head exploding, because you really can't, true curiosity, not the one that your father would say, I'm curious why you came in at 2 a.m. Not that curiosity. He's not really curious, is he? Real curiosity, it's really difficult to feel anxiety or anger when you're curious. So sometimes I have to get curious about how people can hold these thoughts and beliefs and make it okay inside. Nice. And then I kind of lean into my own curiosity, and my curiosity about minds, my curiosity about unconscious filtering systems, and how we need to prop up our own sense of self. And we've got all these heuristics and biases and filters that are designed, you know, to make us okay with ourselves. And that means we make a decision, and we've got these biases that are going to work damn hard to make that decision the right decision. And that means filtering out any information that's going to threaten that. And I know I have to check myself all the time, because I can feel it. I can feel at this point, I have trained myself to know when I am getting, you know, closed around something. Yeah. And I am far from perfect, man, because there's just certain things that are really hard for me to be a little more open on, but I try, because that's the best we can do, you know? And curiosity in the brain is different. Mm-hmm. And noticing what's new and different creates very different neural patterns, you know? Anyway, I can go on and on. Was there any other questions before I go off on certain tangents? I probably should check that chat room.
Yeah, we're watching it. It's
there's one down there from Amy Ross. She wants some advice on how to get the dopamine flowing with a client who is seemingly so flat or made flat by their antidepressants that they're taking that you can't get them to laugh. They aren't continuing the loop.
Right. So, dopamine is not necessarily all about laughing, right? And as we were just talking, curiosity is another one. Ernest Rossi and Michael Watson would say that dopamine and novelty is flowing when they're going into these kind of inward journeying states. So for that type of person, I get them out of their normal state of consciousness. And thank God we're hypnotists, right? Because you don't have to sit there talking to this person, trying to cajole them out of their negative state. Mm-hmm. You can take them into deep, gorgeous trances and have them, from a very different perspective. You can throw in some interesting questions. What can I learn from this? What's important for me to remember? These are just these open questions that when given to people in that altered state, create its own dopamine. And Ernest Rossi would say, turn on, neurogenesis and gene expression, because that is what the kind of curiosity and novelty. So we're lucky in that, we don't have to just go for the more traditional conscious-minded approaches. But as I said, introduce a new technique, right? Ask them how they're doing what they're doing. Someone says, oh, I'm just too depressed. I say, how do you know? Show me. What's happening inside of there? And if they go, I don't know, I'll say, well, let's figure it out. That's why you're here. So when you say this to yourself, what images are you making? When you're making those images, how do you feel? When you feel that, what are you saying to yourself? All of these give you these entry points, right? For me, change work is absolutely this dance. And I almost never know what the hell I'm doing. I don't know until the client gives me the next step. So for someone like that, we're going to explore. We're going to go into other states. I'm going to, do a weird, open focus brain state, or I'm going to take them into trance and go into expanded awareness, this ultimate resource overview, right? And ask, so that too creates dopamine. But, I don't necessarily buy into the whole antidepressants flatten out emotions, because if they did, they'd work better. But they don't. They honestly, they work for such a small percentage of the population, because a lot of times they don't. People might feel that way, and that's because state-dependent learning in the brain says that, when they are in a certain activated neural network, if you want to think of it like that, then your brain is searching for like-minded states. And that's really all it has access to when that particular neural network is turned on. We have, remember, I drew these, here's this neural network of confidence. Here's this neural network of, depression. Well, there's something that happens that allows a neural, what is called, I think it's called like a neural suppression, when one is activated, right? Another way of thinking of it is, I think they call it the Saturday night, Sunday morning bias or something. And it's the Saturday night drinking and, cheating on your wife, and then Sunday going to church. And how can these two things exist in the certain, in an individual? And thank goodness we have the ability to neurally suppress one network when the other is active. And that's how so many of us function.
So we know which one to do on Sunday morning and which one to do on Saturday night.
Yes. And you know what? The Sunday morning, he's just as congruent when he's, in that state as he was last night. Sorry, I said he. I meant they.
But we do that all day long. When we go
Yeah,
home to the family, we're in that state. And when we go to work, we're
totally.
in that state. And we're in and out of those states all day long.
That's right. That's right. And that's our amazing brain at work, that we have the ability, and it's a real enlightened individual that can have those two activated and be cool with it. Right? What did they say? Enlightenment is holding two conflicting thoughts. And sorry, I'm butchering that. I don't remember the quote. I thought you might know, Michael, but
No,
you're not jumping in.
no, I don't know. And by the way, since I said I don't know, I've written it down because a minute ago you said I
Uh-oh.
don't know what's going to happen next, or I don't know what I'm going to do, or I don't know what, something like that. I think this is a really important point for people that are listening. We've been touting the value of curiosity, which I think is kind of a portal, because anything can be behind an interesting question. You can get to curiosity from any state by asking an interesting question.
Yeah.
So
And
that's,
also to not just, to always be curious in your client keeps you in a state of, optimum change worker positioning, in that your curiosity is contagious, but also you're noticing what's new and different. So somebody recently, I think in the hypno thoughts, the new hypnothoughts.com
Yeah.
Facebook group, somebody asked about drills.
Yeah.
Right. And they say, what do you do to practice? And, do you practice? What do you do to keep yourself in these states? And for me, I took that as practicing our craft, right? A musician would be practicing their instrument every day. That's what you do when you're a musician. So how do we set things up to practice? And part of that is cultivating that curiosity, because then you are paying attention. And so much of our craft is sensory acuity, right? It's paying attention, it's noticing. So when I teach something as simple as bilateral stimulation, I teach my students how to, in that one little piece, build in the practice, the drill, so that you practice being congruent, the reason this is working. You practice shifting your tone. You practice the language of time and space. You practice, controlling your emotional states, your body states. You practice paying attention. And all of that in just teaching this, because how boring would it be to just fucking teach this, right? So if every moment with a client is a moment where you are practicing your craft, and most of that is paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're curious, that happens naturally.
Yeah.
Sorry. And when you're doing that, and you can say in the middle of it, at this moment, I don't know what's going to happen next. That can be either one of the most terrifying moments for a practitioner who's convinced that they have to know, that they're supposed to know, and now the session, by the way, is all about them and how inadequate they are.
Yes, and all the stuff going on inside means they're not paying attention to this person at all.
Or when I don't know what's going to happen means I wonder what's going to happen next.
Right.
It can be really exciting and marvelous.
But I throw that back on trainers, though, who train that you must do it this way, in this order, in order to achieve success.
No, it's
right.
Funny because a very good friend of mine at this point, one of my closest friends, John Overdurf, right? So he has his bumper stickers, right? Which is like, all we are is change, and all we are is changing. And and these things, and we always laugh that mine are, all this shit is made up, and and slightly different. But one of the things that I am perpetually saying in almost every demo that I'm doing in front of my class is, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. That one didn't work. Let me jump back in. How about this? Oh, really? That's not it? How about this? And they watch me just throw, right? It's just a conversation. But one of the things I want to make clear, if there's new hypnotists here, is that, you know, I have 20 years where I've been kind of playing in this field. And once you kind of understand how the brain changes, right? The meta pattern of change, the way to activate the neural network, then introduce change and make sure to connect that change to where you need it, then you cannot know what the hell you're doing all you like, because you know that the brain is going to change, right? And so it's not like I'm just sitting there going, I don't know what I'm doing. I know that I've activated it. I know all the different kinds of ways we can activate it. I know there's a gazillion ways to introduce a different emotional state, a different perceptual position. How do we then loop it and connect it back to the moments where that person gets triggered? And this is where the more strategic work that I harp on, you know, that my students know over and over again, that we're going to get to that specific fine moment. There is a moment. It is this thin slice. But once you know how to get that and look for that, once you touch it, then all of a sudden everything else can be made up, because you know it's activated. You know you're just introducing change. Even if it takes you 25 times, the more you do it, the more neural flexibility we got. And the more they understand that they don't have to be perfect either. Your clients don't have to get it right either. And so there really is something to be said for, you know, drills, right? Learning how to get the specific neural networks lit up, so that then whatever you do, doesn't matter what. I mean, sometimes I make a joke, you know, I had a great session where, you know, at the pivotal moment, the wheel fell off my chair and I fell forward. And it was it was like hysterical. I just fell right on the floor, you know, almost pulling my client off of her chair at the same moment. We were laughing so hard that half the work was done, because as soon as I got the laugh, I was like, now see your boss's face. You know, like every different big emotional state, I'm going to be attaching it to the trigger. Right? And build new neural connections. They can go anywhere from that trigger now. They can go into curiosity. They can go into laughter. They can go into thoughtfulness. You know, how many varied synaptic connections can we make?
And yet it seems,
and all I did was fall.
And it seems to me that it's like you have to practice the scales. You got to run the keyboard. You know,
That's it.
You got to, and then you can start to play jazz.
That's right.
But right,
That's right.
but you've got to get it. So if I might add, that question on the group that you were talking about came from David Ruby. I don't think he minds me outing him, and I think that he is even on the call, or he was.
No, he's not tonight, I don't think.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I saw him earlier. In any case, it came from David, and David and I have a couple things in common. One of them is David Kaloff. When we first met each other, these were the two things that we discovered: David Kaloff and Mind Games, Jean Houston and her husband, and then all the stuff that sort of came out after that. So before the introduction of neuroscience in the way that you're talking about it, but the spirit of let's explore, let's find out, let's see what we can do. And so I want to lead you a little bit towards, so you're doing your psychedelic workshops and you're doing these kinds of exploration experiences with people. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, you know, for me, right? So you've seen me do this, and, you know, Rupama's sitting here, I'm looking at you, and she's smiling because she knows what this means in my classes, right? You know, if you don't get step one going on, if you don't find that fine point, do not go anywhere until you get it, because that's going to make the change, right? So I say this because the big way I talk about the way to change something big, right? A big nominalization, like, I don't know, an anxiety disorder or something, and how that's kind of a tabletop, or depression, you know, and how we have to knock down legs in order for that tabletop to fall. And that's the specific moments, right? When was the last time specifically this shows up for you, so that we can get it into bite-sized pieces, right? We can make changes, and then the brain will generalize. So one of the ways that I describe it, another way, is in any given moment with our clients, we are doing kind of one of two things. We are shrinking the problem or building up the resource, because in the end, change happens in the collapse. So you need a resource big enough and a problem small enough, and then it's simple. Then it happens without any effort, right? Typically. The big exception to that, right? So this is the way change work happens in my classes, and I do these drills. This is, you've got to get this fine thing. You've got to activate the neural network. You've got to introduce the change. You've got to, constantly rewire that particular trigger. It'll rewire the whole network, right? So that's kind of my one level where I'm really militant in, you have to get these elements in place, because then it's like magic, right? But there's an exception to this rule, because I always say, how are you ever going to find a resource big enough to be able to collapse the whole tabletop, right? And that's why we go for the legs, because the resource is big and we can shrink the problem and collapse them enough to generalize the brain. And the exception is that epiphany, that transcendental, aha, massive perceptual update that people get.
Yeah.
And they get it through psychedelics. They get it through a mystical aha. They get it when they have a fucking heart attack, and their life has to quickly reorder of what's really important. These are big states. So I'm really good at what I do. I am good at getting these, paring it down and activating the neural networks. I've got it down. I've drilled it for so many years. I can do it without even thinking about it. So I'm always learning and moving. So how can I cultivate those bigger state changes so that everything else is so small, right? How can I create what we're now seeing in the psychedelic research, that people who have been depressed and nothing works, no medication works, electric shock therapy didn't work, they go through one massive, IMDA, IMDHA, really? Good Lord.
It's a trippy.
It's your background, man. It's priming me. They go through one psychedelic, scenario or session, and they've shifted and they change. Same with addictions. People go through one amazing, massive life change. And if you read Michael Pollan's new book, How to Change Your Mind, or Stealing Fire, any of these books that are now once again kind of reigniting this look into what is going on in the brain, right? So that's what kind of brought me there. I mean, I always say that, I'm in this field due to what I feel was one of those moments when I was 19 years old, tripping in Central Park on magic mushrooms. And I had that moment. I had this absolute shift in consciousness where all I can say is everything made sense. Like I understood everything in that moment, and then it was gone.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell you what I understood. I couldn't tell you how I understood it, that things were all connected, that everything did make sense. I can't tell you more about it, except that feeling is palpable, and it has guided me my whole fucking life. Now, for a long time, many years, I was trying every psychedelic drug I could just to try and get back that moment before I realized I started looking at the brain, and I started to think, we seem to make the best drugs naturally. And in order for those drugs to have some effect, we've got to have the neural receptors for those drugs, which means we have to have something similar in order to bind to that receptor, in order for that drug to anyway, sorry, I could go down, but anyway, and that led me to the Monroe Institute. You know, that was my first attempt at trying to create these bigger states without the drugs. And I mean, we are talking ages ago at this point, over 30 some odd years ago. I never thought I would, I mean, I didn't realize at the time that that was hypnosis. They weren't touting it as hypnosis. They were touting it as learn to synchronize your brain with these binaural beats and go into these altered states.
Sure.
And I just thought it was the most amazing fucking thing in the universe.
Yeah. And you came to recognize that the world is created from the inside out, that this is the thing that made NLP stand out in a sense. And NLP really did deliver that message, and I think people kind of missed it. Is that you are creating your experience moment by moment.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Through your thinking.
Absolutely. And that it and that act of creating your experience moment by moment is absolutely malleable.
Yeah.
Like, to me, in my classes, you know, my integrative hypnosis course, my coaching the unconscious mind course, you know, it's like a hybrid of NLP. I mean, I don't, you know, all of it. But I pull what I feel are my favorite parts to NLP, what makes it a standout. And that is the look at how you are creating your reality. Mm-hmm. And notice what happens when we change it. Notice what happens when we take the image and put it here, or hear the thing over here. And people are like, what? And you want to talk about dopamine? Oh my God. I've been making these movies inside my mind this whole time, and I never knew I could just slow them down or rewind them or take the color away, and it changes immediately the way I feel. I mean, that's a revelation to people, you know? So for me, the submodality manipulation, as well as this idea, this modeling idea, you know, because really when I sit across from a client, I am modeling their problems, so that from the inside I have a better feel for what might work. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I had an experience, and I shared it with you earlier in the week, and I'm not going to get into any detail about it. It's quite personal, but basically, and this is what makes what you're talking about imminently practical. Because we are making it up, and if we know that we're making it up, something different can happen in our lives, not just in the hypnotist's office or when our eyes are closed and we're doing some process. So I had somebody that I had been working with basically this person talked to me in ways that I just have not been talked to in a long time, and I just wasn't going to stand for it. So I was fuming. My response was that. And you and I were talking, but I remembered watching you, and I at the expo either last year or the year before. And what I remember, and you stand out in my mind as an example of this. You are an exemplar to me about this. Somebody got right in your face. The conversation was going on about a figure skater, with Tanya Harding, as a matter of fact. And this person claimed to have some expertise that clearly they didn't have. And when you said something into the conversation, he got right up into your face. I said he. He got right up into your face, and he said, "Well, you're an idiot." And I remember that I was absolutely amazed at the fact that you had this opportunity to rage in response. And you actually paused for just a fraction of a second, and you just broke out laughing because you just would not take him seriously. And I thought these are the choice points in our experience, in our day-to-day life, where we can make it up this way or we can make it up this way. And to be able to deliberately recognize that that's going on, and that the experience that you're having is one that you can choose in the moment is I think the most powerful thing that we've got to offer.
No, sorry, I have to unplug this thing. I am literally getting a faulty circuit. That would have been fun.
So I do have
You know,
one
it's
question.
funny. I have to say.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I have to say that, you know, on many occasions, I have the ability to walk the talk. Typically, when I'm, you know, when I'm at the point where it, you know, I have to, you know, like when someone says, when do you use self-hypnosis? I'm like, oh, when I have a headache, you know, like when I have to. I don't just do it naturally every day. I have my own little things, but the truth is I should do it every day. We all know we should, but I tend to use these techniques when I need them. Mm-hmm. But even that, like I have trained myself, right, to that question, right? So when I start to get into that huff moment, like you had been describing, that you can sometimes see yourself get into, part of me, if I have the wherewithal to just think the thought, is it true? And that, of course, in the same way that Milton Erickson would tell an entire metaphor, and then he would just have like the label, like the one line or the one word that when said in trance is going to bring back the whole metaphor. So I have trained myself by using different techniques where the one, is it true? All of a sudden my brain goes on to you know, like, oh, that's the Byron Katie thing, right? Like I've practiced it enough where all I have to do is just think the thought, is it true? And the whole thing just blows up.
Nice.
So I have things like that that I have trained myself to do. And one of them is my ability to laugh, you know, I collect comedy moments. It's almost like I have stacked anchors in my brain that I have perpetual access to. Because to me, it's a shortcut, right? It's the cheap way out is to laugh. Yeah. So a lot of times with my clients, I give them homework, you know, of you've got to find, you know, 3 to 5 things every day of the week that make you laugh. And I don't care if you spend a shitload of time Googling, you know, funny dog videos or cat videos on YouTube, you got to laugh. Yeah. Yeah. And when you laugh, you know, for me, my brain goes, and I take a picture of it. Nice. And I just have it. Yeah. You know, and there's just a bunch of moments like that. If I find myself laughing, part of me does not let it get away. Great.
Okay, so
part of that might have answered Antonio's question. Do we have time, Michael, for Antonio's question?
That's what I was about to say. I was saying we were about to wrap up, and I think that it has answered Antonio's question. But we can read it to her. You wanna give her the question?
Yeah. Sorry, I don't have the.
Yeah, tips for applying meaning making while doing self-hypnosis or any other self-directed change work.
Well, Michael would say a really good question, you know. Is this, what Antonio is this?
This is the Antonio Perez.
Okay. So I've got some techniques like the wise advocate technique. I've got some vehicles, right? So little vehicles for change that I give to my clients, right? Where they kind of open the door and here's this idealized wiser part of themselves, right? So that you can go in and ask for clarity and insight. Some of this is about what can I learn from this? What has having had this given me that I wouldn't have had otherwise? You know, that I can take moving forward. There's things like that, as well as just shifting perceptual positions, you know, practicing those exercises of if I were in these shoes, what's the meaning I would make of this? And being able to widen out your, you know, your framework, you know, widening out the aperture. Some of it is just, you know, going into trance and holding that thought in mind and seeing what comes, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. So this has just been too much fun, and the time goes by so quickly, as it always does.
It's better as a conversation, right?
So, yeah. I'll tell you what. We got just a real quick thing to do here, and then we're going to send you off officially and properly, Melissa. So you gotta hang on with us for about 2 more minutes. We just want to let everybody know that remind them again that the recording of this program will be available tomorrow around about noon is our intention on the Mind Matters Forum at the IACT and IMDHA websites in the virtual chapter.
I'm so jealous of you guys going there this weekend. It's the first year I'm missing it. I don't think you understand how important that is.
I do. So, and also everybody go out and get your CEUs if you were entitled to them. And next month we're going to be talking to Art Geiser, and that's all that stuff that I needed to take care of. Now, Melissa, you said that that's something that is so important, and this goes back to Dave Ruby's question as well, is this idea of laughter and introducing laughter. Today, it's an appropriate thing today, isn't it? Because I'd like to.
I know where you're going.
Yeah. I'd really like to just dedicate tonight to Tim Conway.
Yeah.
For all the laughter that he gave us through the years. And if you need something to laugh at, man, go out on YouTube and look up Tim Conway.
Oh my God! Well, the best are the outtakes, the bloopers, where he just couldn't.
Yeah.
They couldn't keep their shit together. I love those moments more than anything else. You know, so much more than the actual skit is them trying to do that skit.
Yeah.
And keep a straight face. Like, how much fun were they having? Oh my God. I love it.
They made each other laugh. It was adorable. It was great.
Melissa, we really didn't. How can people get in touch with you? You've got stuff coming up, and we should have mentioned this.
I've got stuff coming up. That's right. I'll be in London in next month in June. I'll be teaching the last weekend in Brussels, coaching the unconscious mind masterclass. I'll be doing a Hypno Thoughts Live. I've got a 3-day pre-conference on kind of integrative hypnosis 2.5. Last year it was 2.0. I'm going Apple on everybody. But it's basically kind of where it stands now, where it is today, playing with some different states. I've also got a 1-day post-conference on the psychobiology of chronic pain syndromes, which I feel like is a good day to learn, all these different, cool pain management techniques, but also a slightly different way of thinking about chronic pain as it relates to the brain and how we can use neuroplasticity and change the brain away from pain. I don't know what else I got going on. October, I'll be doing Terrence Watts's conference. I'll be doing the full, I think Sunday of his thing in October, and then I'll be in Madrid. That'll be fun.
Nice.
I got lots going on. I can't think of what else. I've got Terrence Watts. I've got my integrative sleep protocol happening. I think on the 30th of this month. I've got Kripalu. If anyone is near Kripalu, I've never been there, and they invited me to teach. And that is like some big kind of yoga retreat center, about 4 hours away from New York City. That should be fun. I hear the food is really good.
Yeah.
I have my integrative hypnosis course in September here in New York City. It's an 8-day intensive. That's pretty hardcore and a lot of fun. And I've got my coaching the unconscious mind 4-day class at the New York Open Center in July. So I think that's more than enough of me.
And they can find out about you at melissatiers.com.
Yeah. I know. But way back when I knew nothing about, websites.
That's fine.
Like, who's going to find melissatiers.com? Someone who's searching for Melissa Tears.
Well, that's exactly
instead of like New York hypnosis, whatever.
Yeah. Well, this is great because there are people looking for Melissa Tears, and if anybody is, That's the way to do it. So we
Oh,
really,
I also have the Center for Integrative Hypnosis. It's an online streaming site where all of those courses are filmed and recorded, and you can kind of have access to that and watch from anywhere.
oh great.
So
That's
there's the sales pitch.
yeah. It's like a subscription thing.
No, it's actually just you sign you there's many courses on there, centerforintegrativehypnosis.com. And once you buy it, you can access it from any device. You just have it for life.
Cool.
So I have my teaching demos on there. That's a lot of fun.
Cool.
Anyway.
All right.
So I hope to see a bunch of you. I mean, certainly I won't be in Daytona, but I will be in Vegas, Hypno Thoughts.
Are you ready for the send-off?
Oh, sure. What's the send-off?
Well, so you need to make sure, first of all, that that your lap bar and the seatbelt, your lap bar is in the proper position and your seatbelt is in place and everything else. Because what we're going to do is we're just going to unmute the microphones, because it's really nice to have 30 people. There are 24 people at this particular point saying goodnight to you and how much we love and appreciate you for being with us. And we'll send you off. So thanks again for being here. It's been marvelous.
Thank you very much, Melissa.
It was wonderful.
Thank you, Melissa. Love you. You're the best.
Wonderful. Star.
See who's here. I didn't see the list. There we go. Thank you, everybody.